Oh, yeah, it's another Extra Bases with Bristol and Booth. Jeremy Booth on the road. Jason Bristol in studio. Jeremy Booth is at the Major League Baseball Draft Combine. So, Jeremy, your impressions of what you've seen thus far, and are there any players that have jumped off the page for you?
Overall impressions for me with this event, having now been to it a couple times, is Major League Baseball puts a bunch of effort into this. They put a lot, and these things are hard to coordinate. You have a lot of moving pieces in the middle. You have people that don't show up. For example, there's a couple of first rounders, potential projected first rounders of Oklahoma didn't bother to come. Didn't bother to come. Didn't bother to come talk to teams. Didn't bother with the medical process. Didn't bother to come. And while that's not my business, to me, that's a little bit of a slap at Major League Baseball. Okay, it's not, and so if you got to navigate that, and you're the draft operations team trying to put that together in the best possible scenario and make this an event, which is really what they're trying to do, not only to coordinate stuff for all the teams, but also for some kind of fan interest, right? Some kind of fan interest. For those of you that maybe want to know why, for people that want to know why fan interest, because baseball is the only sport where a player who's drafted doesn't show up right away. Okay. In NBA, they show up right away. You at least know who they are. They go to training camp. If they don't make the team, they go down to the G League, but they still are, you know who they are. In the NFL, same thing. They show up literally immediately. And when we're talking about baseball, they're years away. It's the nature of the game. So to have this event be something where you think the next wave of stars, if you will, you're carrying the game forward for that year, are going to be at, and some of the best players in the organization don't go, tough, right? Very tough. So, or not organization, but in the draft don't go. It's tough, right? So when you're in a situation, you got to feel for MLB at least a little bit for what they're trying to do and all the stuff that goes into. Now that said, majority of the clubs are here for interviews. And they're in their suites up top, and they're meeting with players, that are in the agent's assessment or the advisor's assessment have done enough. There's a lot of validity to that. That's in a certain approach, and it's been around for a while, and that's what they think, right? Then there's players on the field who are trying to show something different. And the ones that have shown something different to me are the ones that either haven't been scouted enough, are a little further away for what they'd consider to be present top high money rounds, but still prospects, or guys that have had an injury and didn't perform well during the season and are coming back around. There's all kinds of reasons why guys get on the field, and they've been voted on in theory, or in practice by all 30 clubs as far as what guys think who should be where. And MLB has taken surveys from people involved in their draft operations, such as, USA Baseball or, yours truly, or whoever they think that has an opinion, right? Then you get this collection. Now, the players that have stood out to me are across the board in this way. Kayson Cunningham, who is somebody I've known since he's 12 years old out of San Antonio. His dad, Marco, is a former player. Something I just learned about his mom, Olivia, and I've known them, again, a while, is that Olivia was a track star. And so as I told Kayson last night, I said, bro, you have no shot. Like, your dad's a former pro and your mom's a track star. Like, you've got to be, this is going to have to, you got to be good. He just smiled at me and laughed a little bit, and, he's ready to go. But, Kayson's a lock first rounder. Somebody's going to pop in pretty good, whether it's top 10 picks, top 20 picks, whatever it is. Someone's going to pop in pretty good. And for a high school player, he's a quick to the big leagues bat. Now, is he going to take a while? Maybe. He's a high school kid. Is it something that could be there by the time he's 20? Yeah, that too. I mean, it's kind of a crapshoot with those type of kids from how long they're going to take in their development, because you don't know what they're going to run into. But with that in mind, he's about as safe a high school hitter as you can find. Okay. And he's out here, took BP, ground balls through, and tomorrow he's going to run, went through all the medical stuff. Hey, I want to move up the board as fast as I can. And if you're Major League Baseball, you're loving that. You want to know that kid is here, and he's a guy that everybody loves. He's the player of the year for USA Baseball. He's a future Star Series guy. He's a perfect game guy. He even did the PBR stuff. He's did all the stuff he can do to make sure that everybody checks every box no matter what. Left area code for 2 years, nothing unturned, right? And you know what you're getting, and he still performed and came out and did his job, not only for what to move himself up the board, for what MLB would like to see him do. That's a big step. That's a big move. And Melissa Lockard with The Athletic wrote about it today. She happened to be sitting with me last night when Kayson came up and said, gave me a hug and said hello and talked to the family. And Kayson opened up to her, talked a little bit, and it was good. Now, we also have some second and third rounders on the field who are moving themselves up the board. There's a guy at the University of Central Florida. Yep, he's a future Star Series guy, as you may have guessed, named Antonio Jimenez, who is absolutely diesel and swinging it and throwing the ball across the diamond well. And he's a good player. He's a really good player. He was a good player before. He's a really good player now as far as evolving into his strength, and he's here. And then there's other guys like, Mikhail Holden, who, yep, you guessed it, future Star Series guy who's out there throwing hard and good arm and looking the part on the mound, maybe a little further away, but it's coming. It's in there and it's continuing to evolve, and he may go to Alabama. Maybe he wants to play. Who knows? But he has options. Then there's guys like Brandon Compton, Arizona State guy, a two-way prospect out of high school. Let me see. Future Star Series guy. And what he did was he probably had the best BP of the last couple of days. People walked out talking about him. Another guy, Tim Piasentin from Canada, who I think ends up in right field. If he plays third base, which is what he's doing now, he's a Corey Kosky type. I wrote about him when I saw him in Canada in the Best of the West. Big power, Team Canada guy. A little bit lost in the shuffle up north of the border, but he's getting on the scene now. And so you start lining these guys up, and you start seeing how the ones that have stuck to it and gone through the process, how they show up, and the ones that didn't. So all that to say, all in all, Major League Baseball is accomplishing to a point, at least with the majority of the players, what they want to have on the field. I would be remiss if I said, and as much as I love these guys that do it because they're great to me, they are. There's some guys in the field that don't belong here, and that's a fact. And there's some guys that are here that are probably some favors, and that's a fact. And I'm not going to go ahead and get into that name stuff because I don't want to call the kids out when I say that. And the format could use a little tweaking, Jason. It could use a little bit of making sure the people that are supposed to watch the event are watching the event. Right now, you have interviews going on while stuff's happening on the field, and the scouting director is supposed to be seeing these kids go to the top 300, so to speak. They need to be paying attention, and they're kind of being pulled away. So there's some formatting stuff, and again, MLB does the best they can with a lot of different things going on. They're really out of their control as far as what people do and what they don't. But it's been an interesting watch, to say the least, for the last couple of days, and you walk out here with a feeling on some guys and shaking your head on the others.
A few things I want to add. One, the Oklahoma players, we don't know why they didn't show up. They may have personal things. We don't know. Two, one of the guys that's listed here on MLB.com for spin rate, Mikhail Holden. About 2,900. He was probably in the top 10, top 15, top spin rates. And then Cunningham, we've talked about him before, and I agree with you. I think there is something to be said for coming to these events and this event when, listen, I imagine a lot of players are tired. They have had long seasons, and for him to show up, and any of these players to show up and interview, and this is a different environment. It's one thing when you're at the ballpark or you're at your house and someone comes by, but this is a different environment. So I think that anybody who, I don't want to say shows out, but shows up and goes through the process and is committed to the process, I think that speaks a lot about a young person and their preparation and what it takes to be a professional. Because when you're a professional, it doesn't matter what kind of line of work you're in. There are days that you're not feeling it, but you still have to go out and perform. And I think it says a lot for these players and Cunningham for him to do all this when in many ways I think some people would argue he would have more to lose than gain by coming to something like this.
It's definitely an interesting move to be on the field, but it says a lot about it, a lot about him as a person and as a player and his desire. It's uncommon, and I don't think he did it for that reason. I think he did it because he wants to be on a field.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, he's basically what, top 15 in most mock drafts I've seen, top 20.
um,
I mean, I
he's
know there is some concern, I guess, that has he maxed out physically, or will he? Yeah, I guess maxed out physically. That this is the body he's going to have.
let me say it this way: if he's Jose Vidro, he's a 300 hitter with
Yeah.
15 home runs a year, and he's an all-star.
Uh,
And my comp on Kayson Cunningham is Jose Vidro. That's my
okay.
comp. So for me, that player you're taking in the top 10, regardless, because you think he's an all-star. Um,
What's up, Jose? I know Jose a little bit, but anyways, go ahead.
I think that's who he is. Now, if he's not Jose Vidro and he's so and you still take him in the first round, but he's a 5, well, that's a pretty good player for a high school guy anyway. The only reason why Kayson Cunningham gets knocked back isn't going to be athletic ability; it's going to be pure size, right? Whether or not you think he can play short, whether or not his physicality as far as height wise, but he's strong, he can run. He'll be a plus defender at second base, so he's serviceable at short as the game speeds up, but he can flat out rake, and there's just no question he can hit. So, he's about as close to a 70 bat in the draft, and I believe that. I think we've all known that for a long time. He's just not a secret, and those things help. So, and look, let's be honest, he's got some hardware, he's got some pedigree. He's done a lot of things along the lines to get himself into this position, not by trying to do it, just because he's organically that good. And when it happens that way with your peer class, the work ethic and the want and the desire, it helps. I think he's in conversation anywhere. If I had to guess, real serious conversation anywhere from 4 to 10.
Oh wow, I guess I was light, huh?
Well, I think serious conversation from 4 to 10. That's my guess. I think it's a little bit of a crapshoot this year, and I hate that word, but there is no clear separator at the top, including the guys that aren't here who may think they're there. There's no clear separator there, right? You got a guy named Cade Anderson at LSU who's going to pitch on Saturday that has every bit of an argument to go 1-1. He just can't be here. Okay. Also, by the way, yep. So, you have every reason to believe that's possible. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen if you're the guys that aren't here. So if I'm here, if I'm the other guys that aren't, I'm taking advantage of it, and that's what Kayson's done. He'll be rewarded in the draft on July 13, I believe is when that is.
Up next, should we talk about the Houston Astros or dysfunction in Boston? I'm letting you choose. It's like a choose your own adventure book, Jeremy. Which one would you like? Would you like to go page 1 or page 2? Astros 1, Red Sox 2.
Okay. Let's go with the Boston Red Sox.
What a bizarre situation. And the newest information is that the scouting supervisor was reportedly fired for calling Craig Breslow a stiff on a Zoom call, didn't realize that his mic wasn't muted. And man, it just, wow, things are not, aside from that issue, and that's an unfortunate circumstance. I think we've all had situations where maybe not to that extent, but maybe we thought a Zoom was off or whatever. We've seen plenty of stories. Man, it's pretty clear that things are really, I mean, dysfunctional is the best word for what's going on over there. And Rafael Devers, when he gets traded, says, I'll play whatever position the Giants want me to play. And is it possible that Rafael Devers was basically saying, I just couldn't handle what those guys were doing anymore. I'm not saying that he is. I think there's enough blame to go around, but it just seems like maybe this was a way to get out of that situation, or the Red Sox handled it so poorly that he was like, I'll do what this new team asks, but these guys, listen, I've already done enough for them. There's a lot. I just said a lot right there. A lot right there.
I'll say this part. I don't think any of those issues are necessarily related in a vacuum. I think they're more
Really?
of, yeah, I think they're well, let me say it this way. I don't think they're connected. I don't think Devers is connected to Carl Moshe. I don't, but I think they're all connected to Breslow. And they're all connected to
Well,
what's
I think they're all
happening.
connected to dysfunction.
Well, that too, but I mean, but Breslow is unfortunately leading this dysfunction. Now, I'm going to say something else here, and it's going to be really unpopular with this with a segment of the crowd, and it's going to be very popular with those who know what I'm talking about. You also have a group there that's now inherited or swarmed up on the Boston Red Sox that are driveline people. You've got Kyle Bodie over there. You've got Jason Ochart over there. You've got Dylan Lawson hit strikes hard over there. You've got a lot of guys there who are focused on what I would consider things that aren't very beneficial to playing the game of baseball. And that's my opinion. That's not anybody else's opinion but my own. Well, that's my opinion I'm speaking for. If other people have those opinions, they're free to say them on their own. I've never hidden my disdain for hit strikes hard and what a poor philosophy that is in professional baseball. And I've certainly never hidden my disdain for Jason Ochart or my flat out dislike in what Kyle Bodie teaches and driveline teaches and throw it as hard as you can and pop as fast as possible. I'm not for that. And that's the essence of their philosophy. They will argue all day, but these guys are disruptors and made a lot of money on disrupting, and they're over there doing the exact same thing. Now, with that said in mind, Craig Breslow has very limited experience in being an executive, very limited. And I would say he's not prepared for this role. He's not anywhere remotely ready to handle leading a staff like this. The intel I got on what he and how he handled the job with the Cubs was he stayed in his house in Newton and hardly ever traveled and was never really around. And Craig is somebody who's an former independent league guy who's a self-made player through a lot of things. And you would think somebody who had to fight that hard to get to the big leagues and have a career would have a different perspective on what he's had to do. Instead, he's gone in there with this elitist mindset to tear down everything that made the Red Sox good to win championships to continue what Chaim Bloom was doing. Well, for all of that, you might as well kept Chaim. You keep Chaim in a different spot and let Chaim, who has executive experience, have more of a chance to finish what he started. But no, you decide to go fire Chaim and go ahead and get a guy who's a little bit more vicious and a little bit more has a lot less feel and preparedness for the same position. And in that process, you've run most of the good executives out of the organization. You've replaced these guys with people who don't know what they're doing. You've demoted different people and moved guys around. And now you've taken a guy, albeit somebody who was made a promise by a different regime, and you've run him out of town too. Instead of just dealing with him the way the Giants have and making sure that he wants to go play first base or do something else that's more beneficial to the club, you're still part of this. I mean, look, for all we know, the guy they signed to take his position is going to opt out at the end of the year. The last thing you needed to do was turn around and go ahead and give Alex Bregman more leverage on top of it by running Rafael Devers across the country. That's a horrible, horrible way to handle what they've done. And if you look at it just along those lines, as well as how some of the other things, externally, this again, speaking about baseball operations, externally they've done as an organization, then what Carl Moshe said to him is probably pretty accurate. Because I don't know what you're doing. Now, look, it's obviously something Carl didn't mean to do. He'll never talk about it, and he shouldn't talk about it. I can confirm that happened. I mean, it happened. Okay, but I can tell you that Carl didn't mean to not hit his. He didn't mean to do it. Just said it. Carl's a veteran. I've scouted when he was with the Bureau. I was doing the West with Seattle. I've been around the guy. He's a good guy. He's a good scout. He's an honest guy. I even have interest in adding him here. Don't care what happened over there because the guy deserved it. Now, you can't make that public, and if it's probably not in front of the organization, maybe things are different, right? It was in front of the entire org, and he said it, and it happened. And you know what? He's right. He's right, because you have somebody who's treating these people in this organization as if they're numbers at Yale which is where he went, instead of turning around and treating them like the player he turned himself into. And this is a guy that deserves, again, a lot of credit for taking somebody with marginal ability at Yale and turning it into a big league career for an extended period of time. And he's forgotten what that looks like. How's that?
I agree. And granted, I'm looking at the view from 25 million feet away, and I think I even texted you about this. It's just so surprising that a former player who knows how important communication is, and that is like one of the things that players want. That's numbers. Okay, we get it, but I'm just shocked. And you mentioned the word feel. I'm just shocked that because a lot of times we're seeing these guys, these players get into these roles because they've been a player and they've experienced the highs and lows and what works with communication and what doesn't. And that's what's very surprising to me about the whole situation. Granted, you can't look at everything like it's a cookie cutter, but man, that's one thing that's just really shocked me. And I think I texted you that. I was like, this is just bizarre given that he's a former player. All right.
I'll remind you, I'll just say it again, remind everybody that's listening. While it's unfortunate it handled the way it was handled, it's unfortunate that it's public and in front of the organization, which nobody ever wants. Carl Moshe.
I'm talking about Breslow, by the way.
I'm talking about all that. Craig Breslow absolutely deserved that comment because it's absolutely correct. Now, whether or not, again, it was handled appropriately or handled in a way that anybody would like to see handled or done internally, yeah, probably not, right? You certainly don't want that getting out externally, but that means wrong. That means wrong.
All right, so from page 2, let's go back to page 1 in the Houston Astros. Man, for a mediocre team, Jeremy, they've seemed to turn it around. They at this point in time, leading the American League West by 5 games as we tape this on Wednesday night at 42-31. 5 games on the Mariners, 6 games on the Angels, 6.5 on the Rangers, 13 on the Athletics, 42 wins, 31 losses. I think they're right in line. I think I predicted 88, 89 wins. I think they're right.
I remember where I was, somewhere in that ballpark. We're somewhere around
I think you were a little less.
What was that, 85, Jason?
You didn't have them win. You didn't have them winning the division.
I had the Rangers winning the division. I still think the Rangers are a better team. The Mariners are the ones that surprised me. Now, that said, the Astros have found a way to get stuff done. And I do remember that I said they had a couple things they needed to add to it. They found some of that internally. Now, they found all of it internally, actually. I mean, if you think about Cam Smith, he's having a much better year or much better turnaround. If you think
everything is internally at this point.
Yeah. Jake Meyers has performed. I'm still not on it. Everybody has.
By the way, speaking of, remember how you mentioned that you now would potentially trade Jake Meyers when his value is the highest?
Yeah.
I happened to notice that was part of, I think Chandler Rome had mentioned or had something in, maybe it was a mailbag. And again, it's just interesting that it just seemed like yours came out of nowhere and then, oh, wow, now people, and again, this isn't a slight against Chandler by any means. It's just interesting that you had mentioned this to us maybe a week, 2 weeks before this scenario pops up, and I don't have you on gallery view, but you're kind of shaking your head and okay, now I've got you. Oh, hey, wow.
I like Chandler. I like Chandler. And
very talented.
And I am glad that Chandler, if you heard it, wrote it and put it out there. What I will say is Chandler's a smart guy, but it's also not the first time that I've said something or done something and people have just run with it as if, they thought of it. But that said, we're in the media, right? We're saying it out there publicly and we're talking about it. I had one of my best scouting buddies today. I made a comment to him about something, asked him a question. He goes, "I'm not telling media that." I said, "Come on, bro. Really?" It was funny, but it was,
he's right.
In what we do, that's part of it. So I'm very,
Here's a little lesson for you. Then you just say, how about this off the record?
I did. I said, really,
Okay,
bro,
all right.
I'm not gonna do that. But I at the same time, it's a fair question when I said it, right? To go ahead and get some pieces back. Somebody's gonna want him, but now they're in contention. If they think he's their center fielder, he's got to play.
Well, they do think he's their center fielder, and he
Yeah.
is playing. Cam
Yeah.
Smith, go back to Cam Smith, 2 homers on Tuesday night. Jeremy, when you look at his numbers now over a 162 game projection,
Yeah.
right now he's at 1.8 WAR in 59 games. If he plays 162, which he won't, but if you were to put a 162 game season on Cam Smith right now, you're talking 266, 14 homers, 71 runs driven in, and an OPS of 748 and a WAR of nearly 5 at 4.8 for a 22-year-old who last year, and you mentioned, hey, we don't see guys from the draft 3, 4 years down the line. Well, guess what? He got here quick and playing a new position, he's producing, man. But I mean, listen, you said he was an aircraft carrier to begin with, but I think what you're seeing in his adjustment is probably 14 home runs. That's a little bit more than what you would have forecasted. No, no?
No, I said 250, and you'll have the clip somewhere. But
Yeah,
250, 15 is a great year for him, right? I think expecting above that is a bonus. I think I would have said I was settling in at 10 to 12 on a year one, but 15 was about the most I thought you could get out of him. Some guys thought he'd hit 20 to 25. I don't see that right
yeah.
away. There were some things in his swing that had to happen, but
He's at
if he hits
5 and 26, right? 5 homers, 26 runs driven in
yeah,
right now.
if he's 250 and 15 this year, it's a great year. I mean, it's a great year for somebody with no minor league history to step into the big leagues and do. And then you got an adjustment year next year. You don't really know until year three, right? So that's a great start for somebody with no minor league history. Now, that said, if he's doing this in the big leagues, you got to think that he's at least in Double A by now, tearing the cover off the ball, knocking on the door to Triple A for the second half of the year. That's what you got to believe based on what he's doing at the big league level. So he's holding his own. He's helping the club. I will tell you, the Astros won that trade with the Cubs, as far as I'm concerned. I think Dana did a great job. We talked about it then to go ahead and get a player off the roster he could not sign and get some pieces back to help them. And, away they go, right? So, they're leading the West by 5. The other clubs being bunched together, I think, is just as indicative of how well the Astros are playing versus how poor the other ones are playing as well. Because they're all, 6 games back, 6.5. And I think you said, what was it? Oakland was trailing at like 7.5 back, something like that. So
More than that.
And the A's
Oakland's
are
13. Oakland's
okay.
13. The Rangers are 6.5. And
Angels are
basically,
6.
huh?
Angels are 6 back.
Angels are 6 back, but they're under 500, 36 and 37.
So that's my point. So it's not just about how well they're playing. It's the division's not playing real well as a whole anyway. I will tell you though, and not for the Astros to about 2025. If there's a team I'm watching in the future, it's the Athletics. Mariners too.
I'd say Mariners, but
the Athletics are going to get real good real quick at a lot of with youth at positions. They've got Soderstrom, they've got Kurtz, they've got Muncy, they've got Wilson, they've got Denzel Clark in the big leagues. I mean, they've got some young talent and that's starting to show up, and they've drafted well, and that's where they are. So that division is going to get better in a hurry. I still think the Rangers are a perennial contender. So right now, the Astros need to play well and put their thumb on them to stay ahead.
So right now, real quick search between Paredes and Cam Smith. You're looking at, if my math is correct, Baseball America WAR of 4.1. Kyle Tucker's WAR is 3.1 in 2025. And I didn't even put Wisniewski in there. Granted, Wisniewski's done for the year. Sure. Wisniewski, yeah, it's unfortunate, but man, when you look at what they've gotten out of this trade and the impact right away, I think Cam Smith, most people felt, okay, down the line, but man, that's just like an added bonus that you're able to get something out of him, more than something, because right now he's roughly 2 wins better than the average replacement player. So yeah, I imagine, and actually I probably can confirm this, that a certain member of the Astros front office probably got a number of calls saying, congratulations on that deal. You did pretty well.
Might have happened.
Yeah.
And I think it did happen. I'll tell you this, they're on the right track because while I won't disclose it for the sanctity of privacy and protecting who they're interested in for the draft,
Mm-hmm.
they're on the right guys. That I'll tell you. And they weren't, you couldn't have said that before. One of the things that I will tell organizations out there, say publicly, because we know they watch, is that these players and the agents, although the agents are much more knowledgeable than the players because that's their job, believe me, they come to ask me what I think of the people that they're talking to, what we think of the players that the development systems and how they're going to get better. What we think of the way they handle arbitration and salaries. What we think of where they should go, what their college prospects are. I'm very much part of that process. And while I always defer to the agent when it comes to that, for them to make their decision, agent, advisor, my input is part of that mix. And I can tell you, there's some clubs out there that are absolutely just. I wouldn't send. Well, that's not true. I would send my worst enemy to play for. Maybe not my second worst enemy. Okay, to go over there. My guys, the ones that we know. So the Astros are on the right guys, and I feel very comfortable with the group they have over there in Dana and Dijon Watson and Derek Ladnier. And Cam Pendino kind of in the middle of that stuff as far as helping navigate some things while, the other guys are moving pieces around. And Gavin Dickey. Gavin's learning and he's moving some people in and out. And, they got a pretty good crew getting started over there now. So it's going to be fun to watch as they rebuild this thing from the ground up again internally, right? While they try to win at the big league level. They're actually doing a really good job.
In your estimation, how many personnel from each team what would you say your average number of scouts, player development people are at the combine per team?
Everybody's got somebody here. The question is who they've gotten this in the suite versus who they've got watching the event itself. I'd say everybody's got about 10 guys.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
because the interview room's going to have 5 or 6, and
That's true.
they have a
Yeah.
couple guys downstairs, and that's probably an average number, right? So 8 to 9,
I
10
don't
guys.
think Dana's there because they showed him on television in Sacramento last night. So
Yeah, there's no reason for GMs to be here.
No, I got
you. If the GMs are here, it's because.
But I will say this: he is, of course, always a scout at heart. So
yeah, but they're leading the division, and they're in a race, and they're playing in the division, and he needs to go see what they're doing and be part of that club to get a pulse on them as the trade deadline is going to be here faster than you think.
Yeah.
I mean, we're 6 weeks away from the trade deadline. We're a month away from the All-Star game, right? If that. Things are moving. The draft's a couple weeks out. We don't have the season's already halfway over. And if you're Dana, you've got to believe that you've got your people in position to make the decisions they need to make. Now you're going to be part of the process back when they get home in the draft room. The combine's the combine. You got to go focus on the big league club and see where you're going to add and subtract. Because if you can get to the All-Star break with a lead, you have a responsibility to have enough options in mind, hit the gas pedal to get over the hump and get into the second round of the postseason at the bare minimum. You got to give yourself a chance to win, not just qualify. And so I think that's where Dana's attention is. He knows that better than anybody, or as good as anybody, and that's where he's got his foot on the gas pedal, ready to go forward.
So no pumping the brakes. Instead, it's foot on the pedal and the gas pedal. So Jeremy, thank you for joining us from Phoenix, greater Phoenix area, and the Major League Baseball Draft Combine. As always, if you have any questions, comments, criticisms, leave them below if you're watching on YouTube. Until then, for Jeremy, I'm Jason. Thanks for watching another Extra Bases.